And we'll continue. Try to stay more or less on track here. We're going to do lunch at about 12 o'clock. So if we go through another about 45 minutes, we'll do the next topic in approximately 45 minutes and then go to lunch. After lunch, we will have the final segment, and you'll get home, I don't know, at 3 something, 3:30, something like that. Okay? Hopefully you had an opportunity to get to know each other a little bit better in the groups. At the end of the day, I will ask each group to talk about what they learned or if they got anything useful out of this. So some brave person from your group will stand up and explain kind of lessons learned or benefits or what did you get out of this day? You didn't just waste a day sitting here listening to me. Okay. Also, we'll have maybe IOYAT groups pitching or saying something about what their projects are. But right now, we're going to talk about testing. Okay. In our roadmap of going to global markets, I divided it up into 3 groups. In a way, these are arbitrary, but phase 2 or group 2 here that we're going to be talking about topics is testing. Okay, the first phase was creating hypotheses, thinking, doing homework, researching at home for free or at your office on your boss's time, however you're going to do it, but you haven't wasted yet any of your time, other people's time, or money. Okay, now having formulated the hypotheses, and hopefully you talked about some product hypotheses, what might be the customer, what might be the customer's pain, what might be the solution to that pain, you've got great ideas now, okay? But ideas are worthless until tested. The hypotheses need to be tested to be proven true. Sometimes I notice that entrepreneurs don't think of hypothesis testing in the traditional way, the way they should have learned in 8th grade, that how do you test hypotheses, okay? You're not looking to prove yourself right, okay? That is the wrong way to do it, because the human mind is incredibly powerful in creating associations. In fact, the reason why we have come to dominate this planet is that we're able to very rationally make up all kinds of plans, but the one weakness that comes with it is we often backwards rationalize. And studies have shown that sometimes, in fact not sometimes, a lot of the time, we will make a decision and then work backwards to fill in the reasons for our decision. This is not how you test hypotheses, okay? A lot of the time I notice when entrepreneurs are going through the motions, they're saying all the right things, okay? They're singing from the right hymn book, but they're doing it wrong. They will go to testing with these preconceptions that they want to prove that it's correct. They want to show. So what they start to do is they start picking facts that will support their vision, that will support the hypothesis, and ignoring anything that says the opposite. Typical case, I've seen it happen in my own companies. Somebody has championed an idea that this is a great solution, okay? They have this hypothesis, they say it's a hypothesis, but in their mind it's already like, oh yeah, this is great, this rocks. People are gonna love this, okay? They bring it out to the customers, and the customer reaction is like, this is kind of complicated, we don't get it. They're like, oh, you're stupid, you don't get it. Okay, we need to go find some other customers. Okay, that shows, okay, that's one indicator that you are rationalizing, okay? That is not testing a hypothesis fairly and honestly. You are looking for people to say good things to you. You're feeding your ego. That is not the point of this exercise, okay? Do not rationalize backwards. Do not invent reasons. Do not cherry pick the best feedback and ignore all those other people that criticized, okay? Because this is how you end up into real trouble. You keep hyping it up, You keep only taking the positive aspects. You begin to have group think. Everybody's like, oh yeah, this is great. And when you got 5 heads nodding, then everybody starts to kind of nod along with it. And you keep building, and you're like, yeah, we should go ahead with this. Yeah, you should mortgage your house to pay for it. Surely this will be a hit. And then at some point, reality will still catch up with you, okay? Because not everybody will nod along. And all those other feedbacks that you got that were negative and you ignored, those will come back to haunt you. That suddenly you will discover that when you hit the big market, most people, in fact, say, hey, this is too complicated, okay? So in testing, let's not fall into that fallacy. It is very human. And it will happen to all of us to some degree. We can't eliminate it, but let's try to control it. Do not cherry pick. Listen to the guys that criticize you and say negative things also. So in the session that you had, and in the morning session that we went through, we talked about some of the hypotheses that you have set up in your homework phase, right? You've thought about what the customer might be, what his pains are, thought about a potential solution, how are you going to get it to them, whether it's going to cost or not, how that might work, how you position yourself in comparison to competition or other solutions that are out there. But I think the most important thing in the beginning is to also decide, how do you define success? If you go out and start testing something, in order for those results to be useful, you don't decide at the end, the grading system. You need to decide the grading system ahead of time. Because if you decide at the end, more than likely, again, you're rationalizing, you're cherry picking, you're working backwards. Decide in the beginning, success for us is blank, okay? If it's a customer pain, that 8 people out of 10 decided, yes, I have this pain. Whatever those criteria are, but set them up ahead of time. How do you define? Because if you go to measure a hypothesis, how do you measure? Yard, pound, kilo, happiness? What are the units of measurement? If you do not set up these things ahead of time, again, you can begin to rationalize the responses you get and use them in a way that isn't going to be conducive to you really coming out with a good product. So decide, how do we measure success? And try to be as honest as possible. Have we hit the customer pain? How do we decide that? Interviews, grades, give them a sheet, 1 to 10, how many points, but figure out a way that once you've done the hypothesis, what was the result? There's no sense in just testing blindly and without having any kind of a system for deciding, well, when have you won? When did you get enough points to go on to the next stage, okay? So put that into place in the beginning. Okay, I want to explain a little bit again about the process. I think sometimes people lose focus of the fact that we're doing iteration versus execution in this phase, okay? And this can be confusing because it's a question of terminology. Some people will use the word execution to mean one thing. Other people will use the word execution to mean something entirely different, okay? In this presentation, the way that I'm using execution is explained by this diagram, okay? We are in this first phase right now. We are not in the execution phase, we're in the iteration phase. What's the difference? It's actually vast, and it's a philosophical difference that you need to understand for yourself and completely be clear about this. In iteration phase, you're searching for a business. In execution phase, you're already growing. You found the business. You found this works. People keep paying for this repeatedly. It is something that you have proven a hypothesis. Then you can start growing on that. Then you can scale. Then you can expand. This is more than likely the barrier also where VCs will want to start investing, is when you are growing a business. Not a lot of VCs, and I'll show you some statistics later, not a lot of VCs want to invest into this. In fact, it's a tiny pool of money that goes here, And it is a huge pool of money that goes here. Why? Risk premium, okay? Here, you have no idea what the hell you're doing. You are setting up hypotheses, you're testing hypotheses, and it might turn out all crap. You might find out, hey, my idea is rubbish. It sounded great in the shower, but in the real world, nobody wants it, okay? So that's why if you invest in this phase, there's a whole lot of risk out there. Now, if you've proven your idea that people are willing to get out their credit card, they're willing to put in their PayPal account and repeatedly buy your stuff, now you can grow that. You have proven, at least for one set, for one group, you're solving enough of something that they're willing to vote with their money, or their click, or their tweet, or whatever you yourself set up as the measurement of success. But they're willing to do that action. Not just, that's nice. Because there's lots of that on the net. Okay? And it's tough to make money off that. That's nice. Okay? So that is the philosophical difference. You're searching for a business versus you've already found it. Okay, this works. We're going to hammer this. Okay? We don't have the money to take it global, to take out huge ads, to start running affiliate campaigns, all this. So we have to go to VCs in order to grow this, not organically, for the next 8 years, but literally 14 months, 18 months, and we're global, okay? This is where VCs invest. This is their sweet spot. This is why they want to put money. And so this is also part of the misconception and misperception of most entrepreneurs. They hear the word risk capital, venture capital, thinking, oh yeah, these guys, invest into risky stuff. Well, yes and no. Risky in the sense that usually they're here. There's still plenty of risk here to scale the wrong way, or the competition still, they're not sleeping either. There's plenty of risks here too. But most VCs aren't even willing to tread here. And this is more like angels and government funds and different types of investors that are in that phase. Okay? So that's the difference. That's what I'm trying to show you, that within the now iteration, you do customer discovery and you do customer validation. Okay? And you keep churning through this until you hit on the sweet spot, until you hit on that, and he buys again, and he bought again, and he told his friend, and you start getting the traction. That's when you cross over the barrier and you start doing the next phases, which is already, customer creation. You're expanding into new niches. It isn't just those initial guys that keep buying. Now you're suddenly moms and pops and soccer dads and whoever else is climbing aboard. But this is on this side of the barrier, right? This is on the other side of the barrier. And this is now an execution business. Why is this important? This is also important because usually different types of skills are required on the other side of the bar, okay? This is a very early entrepreneurial thing. If you can't read, it says customer creation and company building, okay? This is where you're like preparing for an IPO, you're setting up your cash flows, everything's starting to look good. This is big stuff. We're talking here, 100 million valuations, etc. here. Most of us are somewhere here right now, okay? And the skills that are required to take a company and make it successful here are very different than skills here. A startup CEO is very different than a CEO of a company in the stock market where he has to show 3% growth every quarter or something. It's very, very different. This guy might have to show 3,000% growth on a monthly basis, versus 3% per quarter. I mean, totally different skills of who you're working with, what is your personality. So as you grow, you also want to keep in mind that, again, maybe I'm not the right guy for this phase. You need to start bringing, as you keep moving through this, you will probably have to also bring along new people. You've got to add to your team, and you got to know when to let go, okay? A lot of entrepreneurs decide somewhere in the beginning of this phase, like, okay, this is enough. I'm going to take my exit, take my money, go and do the next project. Because some people just love starting stuff, okay? And this becomes already the execution phase. To true entrepreneurs, this is like yeah, so what, copy paste, you know, you get lawyers, you get accountants, you get all these people, you have all this delegating. It's not startup life here anymore, okay? So I'm using the word execution in that sense that the execution happens here, okay? This is big E execution, okay? Just so that those terms are clear, because it's very easy to get confused. And in various blogs will use the word with different meanings. And that there's enough confusion in startups to add to it. Okay, so if we're testing, I think that the central issue around testing is, how do we test it? What do we test with, okay? You can even take your initial PowerPoint mock-up. You can test with that, okay? You can test with a piece of paper, with a questionnaire. You can test with amazingly little, actually. And you will see in the various books I've cited to and in blogs something called the minimum viable product. There's a lot of debate about what is the minimum viable product, and people often misinterpret this term, okay? What do I mean by minimum viable product? I personally believe that it doesn't have to be anything more than what is minimum for testing your hypothesis. And you see why, again, it's important to have hypotheses set up, because in order to go test them, you should have them already set up, right? So you've done the homework. You've done your hypothesis. Now you're going to test it. Now you should ask yourself, what is the minimum thing that I can do to test this one question, okay? Starting to be very popular is fake websites, fake landing pages, fake Google Adwords, okay? These are very popular testing. This is the minimum viable product, okay? What do I mean by that? I mean that you do a landing page that says, we have this great social skiing app, okay? Where you can see where your friends are on the mountain. Here's a screenshot. Totally bullshit, complete mock-up, right? It doesn't exist, but you've got a picture of it. And you say, you know, 2 or 3 major things. You know, instant messaging, whatever, chat, and something else. And see how many people click on it, okay? Just is there even enough interest for people to go beyond your landing page? If people are completely could care less about your landing page, there's really no sense in putting a couple €100,000 into programming and making it and building it out to then have the same answer that, hey, people aren't clicking past the landing page, okay? They do not burn your time and money. How many projects do you have in you? How many projects will your wives and boyfriends and girlfriends let you do before they go, get a real job? So think about these things. Don't burn your resources too early, okay? What is the minimum thing you will need to test your main hypothesis, your proposition? If your hypothesis was that customer has a pain, they have this pain, they cannot chat when they ski, and they really need to. If that is your hypothesis, which is okay, then how do I test it? Landing page is a great way. Google Ads saying, wicked new tubular chatting feature for skiers. It's gnarly. If people click on that ad, that means that somebody's interested in that. You know, that there might be something to it. If a bunch of people click on it, that should be a pretty good feeling in your tummy. Like, ooh, I'm onto something. Shit, we could have had, you know, from this, there were like 200 clicks today. We don't have anything. We have just a Google ad. 200 clicks, that's pretty good, you know? That doesn't cost you almost anything. You yet haven't burned the nerves or the time of your programmers. You haven't spent any money, maybe a few cents on the clicks, but you're starting to get an idea, are people even interested? That's minimum. That's minimum viable, okay? It's small, but it answers your question about your hypothesis, okay? What happens usually is that people go, well, that's cheating. That's not fair. You know, people will go there, they'll click on it, and then they don't get anything. Well, not yet. But if, you know, it works, then you'll build it. So it's fair. You know, it's a way, it's not costing them anything. You're paying the pay-per-click. So I would leave the whole, it's not a fairness issue. It's an issue of testing, okay? You haven't done anything wrong. You know, you're not lying to these people. And their commitment is one click. Come on, how much did you take away from them? And don't be afraid like, oh, but they might find out that we did this kind of a thing and then they'll be pissed at us that, come on. Who's gonna, you're lucky if somebody finds out about you, okay? There's startups all over the world, all the time, starting, thinking, and nobody seems to find out about 99.9% of them, okay? So if you somehow get a huge movement of, I don't know, devout Christians out there on the streets like, oh, these guys are cheating us, you know, that's good press. You're more than likely, you'll actually have some traffic too then. So don't worry about it. You're not doing anything wrong by doing this kind of minimum tests. Okay, so what you're really trying to do is decide amongst yourselves, what is the smallest unit? What is the simplest way that we're going to get useful information, okay? Because you can do something really simple, but it's not useful. That doesn't help you. You can do something really complicated, but it's not useful. That is not helpful. So it's all about finding that balance. And there will be battles within your company with programmers, but it's got to be in, you know, Arial font. Doesn't matter what font. But, you know, we should add this one more button and widget. Okay, these are not issues, okay? You should not be talking about any of that. You should be talking about something useful. Okay, what is the useful thing that we're testing here, okay? If you're running an A/B test, you might want to know, is a green button better than a red button? You know, all you're trying to do is find out which is better, green or red. And tests have shown, you know, A/B testing, sometimes 60, 70, 80% improvement in conversion just by changing the size of the button bigger and changing the color, okay? So you don't need to build entire sites and everything in order to test is green or red better, okay? Minimum viable to get something useful, okay? I know there's probably in every crowd, there's all the Steve Jobs fanboys. There's probably some here. I am not one of them. I am not a fan because I thought he was an inhumane person as a human being. I think he abused staff. He psychologically assaulted most of his staff. He was extremely rude. And he was against all of this because he would have his developers make 10 ideal perfect versions of something, cost enormous amounts of money to the company, and then be like, nah, I don't like any of them. Because he didn't like the color or he didn't like the font. Steve Jobs was in no way a minimum viable product guy, you know? He would go insane and spend massive amounts of money on, what was it, that orange, the Google, for one day when the Google logo went up or something, the one color of orange, you know, he texts on Sunday like, oh my God, major emergency, the Google color scheme isn't right on one of the logos we're using on a site. He gets everybody to come to work on a Sunday, all this kind of work, all because, you know, one pixel somewhere isn't the right color. This is not minimum viable product stuff. Now, his propagation of using LSD and that, you know, everybody, you can decide for yourself. But the fact that he drove around without a license plate for 2 years because he didn't want to subject himself to other laws. This is all cool stuff about Steve. But the reason why I really don't agree with that kind of philosophy, and do not be led astray by the halo effect that automatically anything that has the name Steve Jobs on it is now like, oh my God, Steve. No, there is no, oh my God, Steve. There is no, oh my God, Bill Gates. You guys should look at what works, okay? Don't have false idols. Don't have the halo effect. Because watch what will happen. Some guy, some star will go up and be like, oh, this is the guy, he's the guru, he knows exactly what to do. And all the media write about it until he makes a mistake. And then everybody's like, oh, he's going down, he knows nothing. And there'll be the next guy, and there'll be the next guy. Don't be the trend surfer that goes along with each of these things. That's like the diet yo-yo. You know, oh, now it's the chocolate diet. Well, now it's the carrot diet. No. Pick things that work. This works, okay? Get a minimum thing, get it out there. You don't need to spend 6 months or a year picking the right font and color for it. Test it out, okay? That was my little anti-Steve public message. And the minimum budget. Maybe you can do it for free, okay? But figure out, when you go out and test and you use your minimum viable product out there, what's it gonna cost? Ideally nothing, or very, very little. Okay, figure out what is that minimum budget that you can get this done. Because the smaller it is, the more you can do it. And try it over and over again with new words or slightly different. It gives you opportunity if you don't drive up your budgets for testing. It gives you lots of times that you can attack that hypothesis. And now we're back to that, the real way you should test a hypothesis. A bunch of times from all different directions. What was it, the Dyson or somebody said that we did not fail the 1,473 times when we tried to make the Dyson design for the vacuum cleaner. We just found 1,474 ways that we shouldn't do it. Okay, you find the hypothesis.
Yeah, if you said that, he ripped it off from Edison.
Yeah, Edison, that's right, he did that too. He said, yeah, that was the original quote, actually. But that's the scientific way. You keep attacking the problem until you're left with something like, wow, this actually works, okay? So the more of these attacks, the more of these checks, the more of these tests you can do, the more likely it is that you will happen upon that actual customer pain or the actual solution. If you just can run one test, how reliable is that one test going to be? It might just be luck, you know? So, okay, and then the metrics, obviously. I'm a big proponent of metrics because otherwise you have a bunch of information. What do you do with it? Okay, oh, we got all these stats. Now what? Is that good? Is it bad? What do we do? Do we change it? Do we not change it? So figure out what the rules are again. What do you do? How do you take in this input? And what does it mean? If people say, yeah, it's okay. Is that good? Is that bad? I know Estonians, when they go do interviews and they go to America, they're not used to this thing that when they meet with business people or investors, they come back and they're really, you can see they're motivated, they're charged, they're like, yeah, sweet, you know, we rocked. Because a lot of people there will be like very friendly. They will be like, yeah, oh, this is a very good idea. Okay, what that might mean is, oh my God, this guy's insane. I can't believe he's putting his life into this. But it's a cultural thing, right? That Americans are like, yeah, this is great. When they're thinking, this sucks. Okay, but it's a cultural thing. So be careful about the metrics you set up, right? If just because a guy says, yeah, I'd use that, that may not be a very good result, okay? That is not a very resounding success because he might just be lying to you, as you'll find out as you conduct tests. If you're a nice guy, people want to be friends with you. They want to be positive. They want to encourage entrepreneurs. They don't want to shit on your parade. Okay, you seem really into your thing. He doesn't want to ruin your dream, so he might not tell you honestly. So be careful about setting up your metrics so that you're actually getting useful results, not just, you know, stuff your mom would say, oh, this is so beautiful. You're doing a great job. It's like, what the hell is that? You know, kind of like talking about babies. You can't, somebody brings you their baby, you're not going to be like, oh my God, is that a monkey? What is that? That's not a child. No, you're like, wow, that's a beautiful boy. Girl, yes, beautiful girl. Okay? So when you're bringing your baby, your startup to people, be careful that they're not thinking that same way, that you're getting this false positives, that you're getting this feedback. Everybody loves it. No, they just are being friendly. So set up the metrics in a way that you get useful information and that it's honest and relevant, okay? Take away the emotional aspect. One way that I've done this seems to be just one idea. When you go to a cafe or whatever, you can always say, hey, I'm a student, I'm doing this master's program. It's not my idea, it's not my project, but I'm supposed to evaluate this. Listen to this. What do you think about this pitch? If you've taken that personal aspect out of it, you might get totally different results. So think of ways of formulating your tests and things so that people aren't associating you and your product. And so they're not, when they're criticizing the product, they don't feel like they're criticizing you or it's a personal thing or it might affect your relationship, okay? So try to distance those things. There's different ways of doing that. Okay, in testing, this is Steve Blank's customer discovery slide. You all can go check out Steve's, all his stuff is on SlideShare. I've tried to simplify some of the concepts because I like what Steve has to say, but sometimes it becomes too overwhelming. You know, I've tried to use sort of the hypothesis, the test, same setup, but in a simpler way for you guys. But you'll go through, and this is, you can look at it, it's pretty useful, and I recommend going on the net and checking it out. The one thing that is my comment specifically about this Steve's slide is that notice the first bar here in blue, this is all in your office, okay? This was the first part where I said planning. This is in your office. Everything from here on happens out of your office. You know, the green, all this testing, it happens outside of the office. Sometimes entrepreneurs don't want to leave their office. Once they get that office space, it's really fun and cool, and they're developing, and there's this great aura there, and it's like some kind of a fun boot camp, and people forget to get out. Your clients are out there, okay? You guys are all drinking the same Kool-Aid. Usually, you're all like, yeah, you know, you're motivated, you're dedicated, but it's difficult to get customer feedback and if you don't go out into that marketplace. If your target market is United States, it is not going to be very useful for you to do your testing in Narva, okay? The feedback you're getting is in no way representative of your target market, so think about that too. How do you get testing that's useful on your target customers? How do you set up that test in such a way that the results you're getting are relevant? Because, well, you can imagine very, very different. I've already referred to some cultural differences. If you want to be hitting the American market, certain ages, more than likely big cities, you know, your Google Adwords campaign needs to be, and you can tweak it in such a way that it will only appear in certain regional results, okay? You don't need to hear the results from Brazil. You do not need to see the results from Russia. You're testing for the US market, then run your pay-per-click ads or target your fake landing pages or whatever to that market, okay? Sometimes people forget about this and they sort of do it all generally. And I've seen one company at least that for whatever reason, their thing went really popular in Latin America. Oh, they did like a Brazilian translation or something like that. So it went really popular in Latin America. They were getting this amazing positive feedback, and they're like, this rocks, you know, everybody loves it. Turned out later, as they scaled, that the Latin American market loved the fact that it was free, and the moment that some kind of monetization was put on there, it's just culturally people don't pay there, okay? And the moment that any kind of paywalls or anything was up, none of those features were used. So the feedback they were getting was essentially for the Brazilian market, and it would have been relevant if they were going to Brazil with their product, but they weren't. And so it was completely misrepresentative of the US consumer market, okay? So the testing results you're getting out of the office also need to be tweaked to your target market, okay? That's the lesson I wanted to, the green is out of the office, but make sure you're out of the office also in the right place, okay? Think about your target market that you're hitting. Okay, and in testing your customer hypothesis, there's gonna be, first of all, two types of customers. And then part of your planning, your initial stage, you should have figured out, are you a B2B? Are you a B2C business, okay? Are you selling to people, end consumers, or are you selling to businesses, enterprise software, etc.? Who's your client? Or are you selling to government? If you're selling to government, that's going to be a whole other thing. I don't even get into that. Very difficult processes. But figure out, if you're selling B2C, so you're selling to the consumer, so you're individual human beings buying for themselves and their family, versus B2B, individual human beings, but buying for a business, a company, okay? Very different types of things you're going to be testing. Because as you look at the B2C market, you have very specific demographics. You've got psychological effects, all of these things, they're buying behaviors. All of this is very different from a B2B business. B2B business requires different types of skills too. When you send your salespeople out, or when your CEO goes out to meet with B2B contacts, that's entirely different than trying to appeal to the masses, so to say. Okay, so in your hypothesis testing, you need to pay attention to that. Am I selling to people? Am I selling to businesses? Okay, because here again, you can have a lot of mistakes. You can do a B2B business and not understand how do you sell to that business. And I've seen Estonian companies make the same mistake repeatedly. They will go and sell to the wrong people, okay? First, let me bring the example in a B2C. Sometimes what you do is sell to the kids in order to sell to the family. McDonald's has figured this out ideally. 2-year-olds have learned that the big yellow M means they get free toys, okay? Yeah, burger, whatever, but the main thing is the Happy Meal has the toy in it, the toy, okay? So they will demand to go to McDonald's because they want a toy. So in a way, they're asking to go to the toy store, okay? That's really what it's about. The fact that there's fries in the Happy Meal and other stuff, sometimes they don't even eat that stuff, but they want the toy, right? And so McDonald's was able to create the Ronald McDonald, big, huge, Ronald standing out there, playgrounds, and kids are like, as soon as the car drives by, like, McDonald's, right? There have been a bunch of studies how these kind of companies have taught very simple tunes or sentences that small children will then be able to repeat and nag. McDonald's, 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 just, constantly annoy their parents so that they will take them. Okay, so sometimes you're selling within B2C, you're selling to the child, right? And then the child will sell to their parents by nagging, okay? In that way, B2B also has its own tricks, okay? You do not sell always to the programmers. You've got this great program. Good case in point was the Estonian Java Rebel spin-off now called Zero Turnaround from Webmedia, which got Bain Capital investment, right? Initially selling to businesses, things are going great in the 1 license, 1 to 5 licenses, sometimes the 1 to 10 licenses, going great. From there up, sales drop off. They were selling too much to the actual programmers. They're selling, you need if you look at the corporate structure, you need to figure out, in this building, who's actually making the buying decisions, right? And how do you figure out who's making the buying decisions? Is it the CEO sitting on top? Is it the programmers? Is it middle management? Who makes buying decisions? Who has the budget? Whose door should you be knocking on to sell your licenses to this company? The 1 to 5 licenses, usually programmers, download, buy, no problem. Okay, small amounts, under $500. Once it gets above $500, more than likely you will have to have some kind of approval to buy software or to even install software on corporate, servers. People are usually forbidden from adding anything on there, right? So now you need to get some kind of buy-in from an entirely different department, which usually has a head of the department, which usually is some difficult person for whatever reason. They can't make it into upper management, so they're gonna live out their fantasies of power on you. It's like, you want to sell me something, great. I'm gonna make him jump through all the hoops. Okay, so you need to figure out like who's making that decision, and how do you talk to that person? Because if you go to with the story that, oh, you know, it compiles this and fragments that and does this, programmers are going to be like, sweet, yes, that's what we need. If you go to the management with that story, they go, what? I don't understand. Go talk to the programmers, which means we're never going to buy it from you, right? But if you go to them and say, this software will reduce your programmer's work time by 20%. Last year, you spent $12 million on programmers. 20% of that is a huge bonus to your bottom line. Wouldn't you want to be the CEO that brings an extra $5 million this year of revenue? Yes, I would. Actually, tell me more. So the same message, the exact same message, you're selling same software, just targeting it to the right person with the right story gets different results, okay? That's why as you're testing the B2B model with your minimum viable product, you need to also be cognizant of the fact that you're testing, you're charting the business. You literally will draw up, if you're smart, you will draw a little picture of their company, of their hierarchy, of their structure. Sometimes these people will put it on the web. They'll even have the little boxes drawn out for you. Print that out, put it on your wall, figure out, okay, if we want to sell to this department, then we got to surf the bureaucratic web and maze to this guy. So that's the guy I'm going to take to lunch, not these 200 other people, because that's 200 wasted lunches otherwise. Don't have time for that. So in doing B2B sales, your hypothesis testing includes this kind of stuff. You need to understand who is your customer and who's making the buying decisions, okay? You can use these programmers to nag, McDonald's, McDonald's, McDonald's. Their boss is here, you know, maybe that's one way of bottom up. But maybe it's easier to go right to the top, give them this, hey, you're going to save 20% off of your programming, or whatever's your pitch. You know, there's different ways of attacking this, but set up the plan, figure it out. Best way, draw it. You know, who's going to say yes to me? Who has the power to say yes? Who has the budget? So in B2B sales, totally different types of aspects you're looking at. That's why in the planning phase, you have to figure out, you know, who's our real customer, who are we selling to. And then in the testing phase, you can already make specific tests that are geared to finding out what can we sell. Okay, more as a model. I wanted to bring this out to talk about testing your product and your market hypothesis. Old chart, the fact that it has survived and continues to be relevant and work is a testament to its power. Moore in 2002 in Crossing the Chasm book talked about, you know, your bell curve is your standard market, okay? This is the entire market of all the potential consumers that you have. People often misunderstand this. If today I were to ask you, where on this is Skype, then, especially, and I think in Estonia, they'd be like, oh, well, it's somewhere in this main street, somewhere here. Well, it's not. It's nowhere near Main Street. It hasn't even, it's in this. It's in the early majority phase. For real? Who doesn't use Skype? Well, in America, go to Walmart. Check out the people. Walmart's a great place to see society. What is your average, main, middle-of-the-road person? If you were to go to McDonald's or Walmart and do a study quickly, asking those people, do you know what Skype is? I think the vast majority of people at Walmart would not know what Skype is, or how to use it, or have ever used it, or any of that. It has not even crossed here. Only this year, how about mobile phones? They're probably starting to get into this Main Street area, for developed countries, I mean. But let's talk about smartphones. They're right about here, in the beginning of this bell. Because in America, only just last year, was only 38%, this is 2010, 38% had smartphones. Last year, I think it was 44%. So it's starting to finally get to the main street, okay? Again, you're like, who the hell, who doesn't have a normal smartphone? Everybody I know. But this is the problem. We are thinking in everybody I know. Everybody I know, went to college. Everybody I know has a car. Everybody I know has a toilet and running water. But you know what? The world isn't like the people you know. Turns out it's quite different. The problem is we often make decisions based on this weird everybody I know feeling, okay? And I think this is one of the primary reasons for startups to fail, okay? Because they're acting as if they're here with their product, when in fact they're like on the first dot of here, okay? This is the first 2%, the innovators. Like, everybody I know is using Dropbox. Yeah, like here, now they're starting to cross the chasm into here, but you go talk in Walmart to most people about Dropbox, they're like, what department do they sell that in? Ask your parents, how often do they use Dropbox? Like, I don't know, we put stuff in a box all the time. But we're thinking like, everybody's using it, okay? So what happens when you're thinking like that? You start spending like that, okay? You start acting like it. You start acting like you've already discovered all your customers, you know what's going on, blah, blah, blah. You're actually here, okay? Most startups are here. They're lucky if they get into the early market. Your valuations are already over 10 million if you're getting into this zone. So one way to ask is your company's valuation over 10 million? No, it's not. Well, then get real. Start facing the facts that you're still here. Nowhere near here, okay? So I think Moore's model is useful as a reality check also, that your smart, sexy, cool friends are not representative necessarily of most of the market. And things need to be simpler. Things need to be just stupid simple, dumbed down, and it's going to take really a lot of work even then to get people to use it. I mean, these people.
What are web apps like Gmail? Web apps like Gmail.
Gmail. There was a point, there was a point when Hotmail accounts were like, I forget what the number was, but let's say email. Email is probably starting to be already here, right? Because our parents even use email. They may not find any old mails if you ask them, I sent this to you. Well, I deleted it. Well, go in the deleted box. Where's that? They're using it, but they're not power users by any means. So email and email applications, the major ones, are probably somewhere here. Because even older people, everybody kind of uses it. But it's surprising. I think with most companies, most things that we all use, we forget that we're like somewhere here, not anywhere near the heart of the matter. So don't spend like it, don't hire like it, don't act like, this is, of course, everybody will understand, everybody knows. No. Most people don't know, most people do not understand. Most people won't get your idea. Why do I need that? Because your friends are usually innovators and early adopters. If you're going to college or went to college recently and you're into entrepreneurship and startups, chances are that psychologically and sociologically, more than likely, you are surrounded by innovators and early adopters. Go to a retirement home, go to a nursing home, go to Walmart, and you will start to see what the rest of society looks like. And you will understand maybe why your skiing app isn't for everybody, okay? Because most people will not even be able to download. They don't even have the smartphone. If they did, they didn't know how to download it. If they did download it, they wouldn't be able to start it and set it up. God forbid it would require some kind of QR code reading. Like, oh my God, how do I do that? Vast majority of people would have no clue if you put in that kind of things like, Well, you just take your phone and read the QR. What the hell's a QR for most people, okay? And being able to set up their phone to read that, that's beyond the capabilities of the vast majority. So let's not forget that, okay? But yeah, you do start here. So you have to at least get these people excited about it. But that is not the end. That is just a step along the way. It is one little step. Okay, one more slide, then we'll do lunch. Okay, testing targets. So we've kind of already talked about these. These are your basic things that I told you to also have hypotheses about. It makes sense, right? You want to test your hypotheses. You talk about testing whether this is really the product you want to be making. Is this really the consumer? Is this who's really going to buy it? Is this the right price for it? You're testing all of these things because you don't know yet until somebody's bought it at that price. Maybe it's too cheap. Some things are too cheap. People are willing to pay more sometimes. Sometimes it's too expensive. Well, most of the time it's too expensive. Demand. Is there really demand? Is there just one little blip, a small sliver of people that are interested, but then kind of demand disappears after that? Test it. Is this really the market? Maybe India is the market. Maybe China. Maybe you totally misread. Maybe you're wrong. So these are all the things that you're going to test. One way to visualize, I just wanted to throw this slide in here. One way to visualize all of this, is the business model generation canvas. Most of you have probably heard about this. See, I'm generalizing again, right? I'm thinking all of you are innovators or early adopters. Okay, wait, quick show of hands. How many people know what business model generation is? Okay, now everybody's going to raise it because we're like, oh, I'm not going to look like the only one. Like, oh, yeah, I know what that is. I generate all the time. My car's got a generator. Business comes out of it all the time. Okay, so you know what this is. This is a good way, again, to throw things up and figure out, okay, what's the value proposition we're testing, you know? We think that this is the value. You know, let's test it. How do we test this? How do we test the best way to have a customer relationship, right? What kind of test can I set up to figure out, do we have this right? You know, what kind of a test can I set up to see that is this the best channel, okay? So now you're taking different models. I'm introducing sort of multiple layers. You're taking the business model generation layer, you're putting on top of it your minimum viable product to test out each of your assumptions and your hypotheses that you wrote into your business model generation. If you go through those two layers, I would begin to say that your hypothesis will probably start to be quite believable and valuable. This is also the kind of discussion, if you have with an investor, you say, okay, so we started out by thinking that our main value proposition is X, that skiers want to chat on the mountain. We tested it, turned out bullshit. They don't. What skiers want is cheaper lift tickets, okay? So we set up a new site where you can buy the cheapest lift tickets from, you know, Austria or something like that. We tested that again. Turned out, yeah, people like to save 50% on lift tickets. And we have group one for skiers. And investors go, very interesting what you've done here. You had a value proposition, you had a hypothesis, you were smart enough not to fall in love with it. You tested it, didn't work. You pivoted, you found another niche. You tested that got some repeat sales. You figured out the best way to do it is by offering a site. You communicate with your clients through the site. You send them messages. You have a conversation. You begin to build a community around that. Your customer segment is happy because they have a specific pain of expensive lift tickets. $50 a ticket per day is standard, more even, I think. Saving 50% from that is a significant pain. For a family of 4, they might save hundreds of dollars. Yeah, and that test turned out. Now you have some assumptions how much things cost. That is a good conversation with an investor or a strategic partner. They see that you've gone analytically, really thought about this, that you have some depth to your opinion, to your hypothesis, to your idea. It's not just, we decided to do a skiing app, okay? This is something entirely, this is a whole other level, right? You show your own competence. You show your level to the other people you're talking to. You will be taken with so much more respect, you will get different kinds of feedback. Okay, actually we'll do lunch now.